A lot of e-learning developers know this feeling. You spend hours engineering a clever workaround to make an effect behave exactly how you want it. You finally crack it and it looks professional, but then a week later, maybe a month, the tool ships an update that does the whole thing automatically in one click. That actually happened to my guest today. Thaddaeus Smith is one of the sharpest storyline developers I know. In this episode, he's going to walk us through building the same interactive zoom effect 3 different ways. We're going to talk about the original timeline hack, which required a lot of pause layers and cue points, the Morph transition that made most of the process obsolete overnight, and then an AI-assisted version that produces the smoothest result of all, but at the same time, the most complicated and risky. Along the way, we're going to get an honest look at where AI actually earns its place in the development process and where it's quietly adding hours. So if you build in Storyline and you want to actually develop something that's efficiently produced with the most up-to-date processes, you're going to want to lean into this segment. Hey everybody, Erick Prospero here, and welcome to the Learning Lab. Today we have Thaddaeus Smith. He is an awesome storyline developer, e-learning developer in general, and has one of the coolest portfolios that I've seen. Before we jump into it, Thaddaeus, can you tell us a little more about yourself and the project we're reviewing today?
Sure, Eric, thanks. So I am going to be showing a sample that I made to demonstrate how to use the zoom effect in Storyline. And you asked me to tell a little bit about myself, I believe, too. And I'll back up a little bit. I've been in the education industry for about 24 years. I've been in instructional design and e-learning development going on about 3 years now. And I just dove in head first when I discovered e-learning development. It just felt like it's something I should have always been doing. I wish I had started earlier, but I love it. And I do it now for a full-time freelancing job, and it keeps me quite busy. Yeah, and I work with various clients. Some of those names are Yukon Learning, Siemens, Storybook Learning, StoryArc. So various clients that I work with. And I also am an instructional designer. So I also write storyboards as well, but I really like to focus a lot on the e-learning development and the authoring tools and the future of e-learning development. So going back to what this interaction is, I used to, and I say used to because I have little time for it now, used to participate a lot in the Articulate eLearning Heroes challenges. And one of the challenges was about the zoom effect. And a lot of times when you'd use zoom effects in e-learning would be to zoom in on various aspects of a machine or of a document, which is a real common use for it, or just getting the learner to focus on a certain part of your slide or a certain part of an image. So the challenge was to show how to make or demonstrate how the zoom effect would work. And for this particular interaction, I chose a piece of art an artwork that has a lot of hidden symbols in it that mean different things. I thought it'd be a fun way to kind of demonstrate how Zoom works as opposed to using some sort of a dry document. So that's what we'll be looking at today.
That's pretty cool. Now, can you pull it up and just kind of explain why it's a good example for discussing Zoom animation and Storyline? Like why this specific one? Which, by the way, it was a really cool example. I love the approach and application.
Well, great. I'll show it to you. I'm going to share my screen. So you should see my Storyline window. If anyone's familiar with Storyline, this is the story view, and you'll see 3 different scenes. The original is the one that I started with, and I'm going to demonstrate just what the interaction looked like. And it takes a little second to warm up, so we'll wait for a second.
Nice. Okay. All right.
There's also some voiceover, which I will skip through because we don't need to hear all of that at the moment. But it is important for the build, and I'll explain that in a little bit. So the way this works is you have a description of the art piece, and then if you move your mouse over various parts of the artwork, you can see these rectangles that appear around various objects. And when you click on them, what happens is it zooms in to that object, and then the voiceover tells about what this object is you're looking at. In this case, these red shoes that have a certain significance in this painting. And then you click close, and it zooms back out, and it goes back to the original. And you can also see at the bottom of the screen, it says you've discovered 1 of 6 elements, so the learner knows, have they explored them all or have they not? I chose not to have visited states. You could have had you click on something, it doesn't appear again, but I wanted it to be a free navigation. I also have a menu on the left, which normally would not be there, but it's kind of there for your reference to see how things jump around. So again, that's how it works. It zooms in, tells the narration, and then it zooms back out again. So that is the basic beginning of how it started. And you can imagine, again, this being a document of some kind or some sort of a piece of machinery that a learner needs to get a good close look at. And then when it zooms in, you can have more information about that particular object.
Yeah, definitely. Or in the healthcare space for medical anatomy.
Exactly.
There's a ton of application here.
Exactly.
Great. Now, are you going to pull up the next version of it?
Well, I can talk about, I think what's interesting is the evolution of how this worked or how this went. So when I first developed this, I had to go back and check. It was in March of 2025. So literally about 15 months ago. And when I started out making this, I was playing with the zoom function. And let me go to a regular slide here. If you'll notice, the zoom function is on the timeline. It's at the bottom of the screen. And that's great, but what that means is that when the slide starts to play, something will zoom in and then zoom back out again. It doesn't zoom in when you click on something. So when I was demonstrating it, I clicked on it, it zoomed in, and then when I clicked on the close button, it zoomed back out. And it seems like that's the way it should work, right? So you'd think that on this main slide, I could just have all these different zoom areas, and then when I click on a button, it zooms into that area. Well, it doesn't work that way because the zoom function is tied to the timeline, meaning once it plays, it zooms in. Once that timeline moves forward, it zooms back out once it finishes. So that was problematic. So I was like, okay, well, I want to zoom in on different spaces and I want the user to control it. Sure, I could have just had it zoom into the chandelier, talk about it, zoom back out, zoom into the mirror, talk about it, zoom back out, but I wanted to be more interactive. I wanted the user to click on or select different areas and cause that zoom to happen. But the problem was, well, it's on the timeline. So what I had to do is I had to create one slide for each object that I wanted to zoom in on. So you notice this is the main slide. This is the one that has all these different hover areas that you can hover on. And then let's say we click on the chandelier, it would jump to this slide. And notice on the timeline, you've got the picture, and then this rectangle here is actually hidden. That's for my reference so that I knew where to put the zoom area. You've got the picture, you've got this group, which is basically the X that you click to close it. And then you've got your zoom area. And I want you to notice here, there's a little cue point. Well, why is there a cue point? Well, that is there because once it zooms in, I want that timeline to stop, right? And I thought about, well, how am I going to do that? Well, what I did is I added the audio on another layer, and the settings of the audio say, pause the timeline of the base layer when this layer shows. So think about it this way. You start here on the timeline, it zooms in, it hits that first cue point, shows this layer, which is the audio, and then it pauses that timeline so it doesn't zoom back out. If it didn't pause it, it would zoom back out. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
It's a little technical. So that was the solution is, okay, well, this audio, I don't know if I pull up this pop-up window, if you'll see it. Do you see my pop-up window? No, you don't.
No.
There's an option to pause the timeline of the base layer when this layer is showing. So what happens is it shows that, it pauses that zoom. Then when you click that X, it hides that layer, which then resumes the base layer, meaning it zooms back out. And then once it hits the end of the timeline of this slide, it jumps back to the main one again. So it's a little technical and it took me a while to figure it out, but it does work and it works pretty well. The pain about it is always having to make sure that the timing is just right, having your cue points in, and notice for each one, they kind of all look the same. So once I figured it out, it worked just fine. So that's the first way I did it. So what's really interesting is that was March of 2025. Probably about a week later, Articulate decided and said, hey, we're announcing our new Morph transition. And that's when I was like, oh, well, that'd be a totally different way to do a zoom function without using zoom at all. So I can show you that. Do you have any questions?
No, that's pretty clear. And that was an interesting breakdown of how it was a little more tedious than necessary in the past, but I'm curious to see if that tediousness is gone?
A little bit. So I'll show you. So this is the Morph version, and you're going to notice exactly the same number of slides. So Morph did not save me from having different slides or a different number of slides. But what it did do is, if you notice these extra slides here, there's no extra layer. There's no audio layer. There's no cue point to have to pause it or anything like that. None of that is necessary, because what Morph does is you basically have this main image, which is the painting. And then on each of these slides, I'm going to have to zoom it way out. You're going to actually see all that's on this slide is a huge version of the painting. Now you can kind of see where the actual slide is. Do you see this rectangle that's appearing? Yep. That's the actual slide. That's the size of the slide. So this picture is gigantic around it, because what that does is when it moves, the morph feature, when it moves from one slide to the next, it'll take an object and it will move it to the size and position that it is on the next slide.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I take this slide, which is this teeny little picture because the slide's really zoomed out. This exact same image is here on this slide, but it is zoomed into where I want it to be. And what it does is, when Storyline sees the morph transition, which you add just by going up here and you choose morph, when it moves from one slide to the other, it moves that object into wherever position you want it in. And if it's bigger, it makes it grow. So what that does is it gives us this sense of zooming in on the object. And you'll see that for each of the things, each of the different objects, I had to do the same thing. I have the dog down here zoomed in, and on this one I had the mirror zoomed in. So it was actually a lot easier to do because I didn't have to think about pausing the timeline. I didn't have to worry about having an extra layer. All it does is it zooms in, it says the audio, and when it's done, this little X appears, and then you can close it, and then it goes back to the main slide. And what do you think it would do when it does that? Because it's also a morph. What would the picture do? If it goes from the big to the small, it zooms back out again.
Yeah, that almost seems like the intuitive format. I'm actually shocked that I wasn't doing that before, right? Instead, you no longer have to create extra slide layers on top of this, which makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it really is just a much simpler way. I think the trickiest thing was just realizing that, I need this little rectangle to show me where the slide is. Because when you put an image into Storyline, I could just hide it. You can see the slides right there. But once the picture's on top of it, you can't see it anymore. So you got to have some sort of reference point. So I just put that rectangle in, say, okay, well, this is my slide size. And I made the picture as big as I needed within that square or that rectangle so that it would zoom into that particular spot. So that's how Morph really simplified things, and I would say it's easier and less technical than the first version. It doesn't require a pausing of the timeline. The timeline doesn't even matter with the Morph function, which made it so much easier to do. So I kind of was like, wow, that would have been an easier thing to do, so much easier. You just have to make sure that you have a really high resolution image. So otherwise it's going to look a little pixelated. So yeah, and what is funny to show you though, if I preview this, the zoom is not going to look very smooth, but then once it's published, it looks nice and smooth. Because when I was experimenting with this, I was like, wait a minute, that kind of looks jumpy, and I'll show you what I mean. But then in the published version, it looks great. So I think that's just because they don't put as much processing time into, see how it kind of jumps?
Oh, that is cool.
Yeah. And it jumps back out. It like wiggles back and forth. And at first I was like, well, that's a fail. That didn't work. And then I published it and it worked great. It's nice and smooth and zooms in and out and it looks really good. So yeah, a big time saver, I think. But again, just have to ignore that. So that's my advice to anyone using Morph. Like, don't worry about it in preview if it's not looking great. Publish it and then see what it does. Used to be that way with JavaScript back in the day. You couldn't see your JavaScript in preview and you had to publish it to actually see how it would work. So it's kind of the same idea. Maybe they'll fix that someday.
To be honest with you, I kind of like that effect, but it makes it feel a little real, right? Yeah. But I can see how it could be a bit of a distraction if it's not planned or if it's not necessarily controlled.
Yeah, it kind of gives you that cinema verite, like a feel, somebody holding a camera and shaking it. So, yeah, I mean, if you're going for that too, that would be pretty cool. But then I don't think you can actually make it happen intentionally.
Yeah,
You'd have to have like a whole bunch of slides with it moving around different places. But yeah, that was the Morph function really simplified this a lot.
Yeah. So what you did initially was really impressive because you found a clever workaround, but this kind of solves the need for that workaround, right? And very cool feature. Now, how does the AI assistant play a role in this?
All right. Well, so that was my next thought, because the AI assistant in Storyline is evolving. They keep adding more and more features to it, and a lot of times they just encourage developers. They say like, experiment with it, see what it does. So I was like, you know what? Let me see if I can do the zoom using AI. So I will show you what that looks like. So one thing you might notice immediately is only one slide. There's no more 6 slides. There's only one. But I will say I only did this for one object. I did not do it for all 5 objects, or however many I have. I forget. 6 objects. I didn't do it for all 6. I just did it for one. And you're going to notice here, though, I have 2 layers in the lower right. And I'll explain why this happened. So what I started doing is I go into the AI assistant and I just said, hey, I need you to zoom in on the slide, is what I first tried. And I gave it the coordinates. So what I did is I put a little rectangle around the mirror. I looked at the XY coordinates and I said, I need you to zoom in 8 times on X, 115, Y 932, zoom in and let's space the slide. It's like, sure, I'll do that for you. And it did the JavaScript. I ran it, nothing happened. I was like, oh, that didn't work. So with a little more experimentation, I realized it's not the slide you need to zoom in on, it's the actual object itself. So when you are in Storyline, you have an object here. You can go to you can actually just right click, you can go to accessibility, or you can look up at the top. There is this object ID that every object that, in your build has. It's kind of small, but you can see it. There's just a bunch of random letters and numbers. That, when you're talking to JavaScript or when you're talking to the AI assistant, you refer to your objects by that number, and there's no ambiguity about what you want it to interact with. I could have said zoom in on picture 1, but who knows? Maybe I would have had another thing called picture 1 that gets confusing. So I used that particular ID, and I went to AI and I said, hey, you know what? I need you to zoom in to these coordinates on this picture 8 times and have it execute at the 1 second mark. This is my first experiment. And then it worked. So it zoomed right in on that particular object. How did I know what to zoom it in on? Well, this also gets technical, and this is what I want people to understand. AI can do some wonderful things, but also the state that it's at right now, especially with e-learning development, there's a lot of experimentation and a lot of trial and error that goes into it. And ultimately, doesn't always save you time in the end, but the results end up being pretty great. So what I had to do is go to the states of the object. I had to go to edit states. I had to put in a rectangle where I wanted it. Then I had to go up to the coordinates and see where that rectangle was, and then tell AI, okay, I want you to zoom in on this object ID at XY coordinates XY, and then it worked, and it zoomed right into where I wanted it to be. And I was just delighted. I was like, hey, it worked. It's great. So then I said, okay, well, now I want this to happen when I click on something or when I select something. So when I select this little hidden box that's over this mirror, actually I did the signature, I want it to show up. I wanted to zoom in. Well, that wasn't working. And then I thought, well, okay, well, maybe it has something to do with it has a function to say execute JavaScript when the user selects something or clicks on something, but it wasn't working and I couldn't figure out why. So what I then did is realized, well, layers were the answer. So this is where my hopes and dreams of having a 1 slide, no layer AI assisted zoom function went out the window. Not saying that that'll never happen in the future, but it's not there yet. But what it did do is I was able to go to a new layer. Basically, all I did is take this new layer, and then I asked for AI to write JavaScript To zoom in, same thing, the same coordinates. And we can look at the JavaScript. It tells you at these coordinates up here, and it tells you like how much to zoom in and all that fun stuff. I do not know how to write JavaScript, so that's why I'm relying on AI to do this for me. And what it does now is when this layer, all that button does when you click on it, it shows this layer, and then that JavaScript immediately executes. And then it zooms in where it needs to be. The close icon shows up. And then here was another problem, is I wanted it to zoom out again before it goes back to the main slide. Another thing I discovered with AI and with JavaScript is there is no trigger in Storyline to say when the animation from this JavaScript ends, do this next thing. It doesn't know that it's finished, the animation, because it's not on the timeline, I think that's why. So I had to solve that again with a clever workaround by then creating a timer layer, which just has a ghost or a phantom object, a dummy object on the side, so it doesn't actually show up. And this is timed out at 2 seconds. And what that does is when you're on the main slide, you select signature, it executes the JavaScript, it zooms in on the signature, it shows the little X to close. And then when you hit close, it executes the zoom out JavaScript. But while it's doing that, it's showing this invisible layer for 2 seconds. And then once that layer is done, that means that the zoom for the JavaScript is finished. And then it hides this layer, hides the other layer, and it goes back to the base layer again. And it worked.
I don't know if I'd rely on that.
Yeah, it's and I haven't, there's a little bit more finessing I could do to make it look a little prettier, but like it's just for experimentation. You can see that it totally works. So here we are at the main slide. Okay, we've heard all that. I'm going to choose the signature. And what I really like is that's a nice smooth zoom, you know? And then here it is. It's just waiting. I can stare at this pixelated picture as long as I want. This could be fixed too by upgrading the picture. I just didn't do that. And then when I click this close, this right now is showing a layer that you can't see. When I click close, it's going to show that 2 second layer while it's zooming out. And then that layer disappeared. You didn't see it happen. And now we're back at the original again. So I think personally, this zoom is the smoothest and most impressive of all. And it is done with the JavaScript. Now, what's the drawback? Well, you'd have to have 10 layers. You have to have 5 layers, one for each object, and then 5 layers for the timing of the zoom out of each object. The other issue with it is, will it work as beautifully for each one, or how much finagling are you have to do, or convincing AI to like edit it to make it look good? But once you get it down, it works. So that is the AI experience I had with this in making this interaction happen.
I don't know if I would rely on that at scale. That's just a bit overly complicated. I mean, it just takes one update to shift some things around and it just misfunctions.
100%. And I think that is a lot of the conversation around AI, especially in e-learning authoring, is updating. Absolutely. Because what would you have to do to update this? Let's say a client said, you know what, I don't want to zoom in on the signature. I want to zoom in on that dog at the bottom. And you're like, oh, okay. You'd have to go into AI and say, I need you to change the JavaScript, you know, and then hope that it works. And who knows if it's going to work or not, you know? So that is definitely, you know, part of the conversation these days is how editable is this in the future from other developers who weren't involved in the original development of this.
Not very. I mean, it's one of the challenges we have, even just building applications off of a e-learning course, right? How do you transfer that entire process? I mean, there are some projects and tools, but I don't think Storyline has that capability yet. And again, there's just stacks of unnecessary code on this that could, I'm trying to think, have you found a good use case so far where you thought, you know what, this is perfect, AI solves this problem in Storyline?
Yes, but it's not animations, and animations are what they're focusing on a lot. And when I say they, I'm talking about Articulate. You know, they're saying, oh, you can do these really cool animations with JavaScript. It is true, you can, but I keep not doing that with any client that I have. And as a matter of fact, they prefer that I use the traditional motion paths and animation, exit and entrance animations that are built in with Storyline because of the editing factor and being able to change things, because things change all the time. A client will come back and be like, oh, change that word. And oh, the timing is off, and having to switch that. Where AI has been really useful, though, is asking it. Let's say I have a client sends me a finished course, and they want to say, we want this new course to look this way. And I come to a place in the storyboard, and it says create a tab interaction in order to present this information. I could go through the 50 slide finished course they gave me and try and find a tabbed interaction, or I could go to AI and say, hey, are there any tabbed interactions in this project? And it can find them. It'll be like, yes, it's in slide 3.3. And then I can jump right over there. That is super useful. Or saying, has this, you can go into the media library, for example, if you want to know if like an image has already been used, but sometimes those images have been cropped or whatever. You could ask AI, like, does this image show up in any other spot? You could ask it to mainly like searching for things is what I use it for the most these days. Or saying, are there any like triggers in this particular interaction that are repetitive or unnecessary? You could use it that way. But honestly, I'm not using it a ton, because what happens when I use the AI assistant is I end up feeling like I start spending more time than if I had just done it on my own. And I'm not saying it's always going to be that way, but that's just the where it is right now.
Yeah,
for me,
you're just adding risk.
For me personally, yeah. I mean, some people love it and are probably using it all the time. And I don't want to ignore the AI image generation, the AI audio generation that Articulate has just gotten better and better and better, to the point where I got rid of my external AI like image generation. I used to have Midjourney, for example. I'm like, I don't really need it, because the AI image generation and Storyline is really good now. So, but the assistant, I'm still trying to figure that out. They give you all kinds of examples of what you could do. Suggest generate sound effects or create and edit quizzes. And that's another one too, is if you're trying to find content, let's say, is there content about a particular topic? It can search through the entire thing for you and then find that, which is really, really useful as well. Kind of like the find and replace function, but that's like looking for a particular word or phrase, and it may not be exact. Yeah. So does this course talk about XYZ? And then it can go through and say, yes, it's on slide 5.2. And then that's really useful as well. So that's how I found it to be very useful so far.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's essentially a very advanced control find feature.
Yeah.
But,
so far.
And that's good to know that the images are up to par now, because I know that was an issue we've had in the past where we would just produce it off. Then I think their VO is done by, is it 11 Labs or the other one? Okay. Yeah, and they're crushing it. I mean, that's, we rarely use human voiceover. It's weird when we're requested to, right? We had one client recently where we're just like, really?
It's gotten so good, and it's hard to deny. I have friends that are voiceover actors. I'm like, I'm sorry, it's really good.
It's just easy. I don't have to call you guys.
Yeah.
Well, for us, it's just the process is faster, right? If we need to change something, we don't have to deal with revisions, and it makes it significantly easier. So I love the take on this process, and it's just interesting to me because to think of AI as an authoring tool for Storyline when it's designed as an authoring tool for more robust coding skills, right? I can see how that could introduce a layer of complexity there.
I've also heard, about a lot of talk about what's it called, Claude Design, which is supposed to be able to be a completely vibe coding based e-learning authoring software. And people have been coming up with some pretty great results. I've never played with it myself, but I'm hearing that it's pretty effective, but there's a whole bunch of unanswered questions, like how is it going to integrate into the LMS, and how does it do reporting, and how do you go back and edit it, and all that stuff. So, I'm very curious. I feel like we've been going like this with AI, and I don't know. I'm starting to feel a little bit of a plateau at the moment. I don't know if other people feel that way, but it's like shooting up. But now we're kind of getting to the point where like, okay, well, where is it really useful, and where is it really going to save time, and where does it actually just take more time in the long run? So it's a really interesting trend right now.
Yeah, and we were just talking about that e-learning conference that I went to, and even there's 4 vibe coding sessions, and I was one of them. But I think I was the only person that said, look, there's a ton of risks on this with bugs, hosting. There's layers of security issues that you guys have to consider. So it's not the silver bullet everyone's announcing it to be, right? You have to factor that in.
Yeah.
But the good news is it's getting better, right? Like it started off as something that produced something quickly. Now we're getting quality. And I think the next step is integration, right? When we start to see complete integration into the systems that we already work with, that's when we're going to be excited, right? Because that's when we have that Swarm format resolved. That's when we're able to collect data and actually pull it into an LMS, because where I do see potential, it's not just producing drag and drop activities faster, right? We don't need that. I mean, Storyline does that, but to create scenarios for practice. And that's where Storyline struggles, because even we build Storyline courses, we build video content, and they're really good at delivering knowledge-based exercises, but are they really good for practice?
100%. Yeah. And that's where I think a lot of promises with AI models is for exactly that, for having very customized responses to learner input, which cannot be done, that way with the traditional tools. You have to anticipate what people are going to say and then give them a packaged response. Sure, it's based on 1 or 3 or 4 choices, but it's not a free form. I'm going to say or write this, and then it just responds, So AI will be very powerful in that way, as long as, you've got everything packaged correctly so that it's not giving you hallucinated or sloppy information. But I have a lot of hope for that. And I think it's a great way to use it in the e-learning space.
Awesome. Thaddeus, I definitely appreciate the time. This is going to be one of our cooler examples because we're really getting into the weeds on this one. What's a good way for people to get a hold of you and see your work?
So my portfolio is available on my website, which is tmsid.com. It's TMS as in Thaddeus Michael Smith, my name. ID is in instructionaldesign.com. And you can always reach out to me on the website. My email's on there. You can set up a 30-minute exploratory conversation. Sometimes people have signed up just to chat and just to see how things are going in the industry. I'm always happy to connect with people there as well. Or on LinkedIn, you can always find me. I have a very unique spelling of my first name. So you put that in Thaddaeus and you will find me, because I don't think anyone else has that name, at least spelled.
It is. Oh, for sure. No, This has been wonderful. I'm very excited about the conversation, and please use that link. Awesome. Thank you so much, Thaddeus. Cheers.
Thanks, Eric. Really appreciate it.
Want to learn more about microlearning best practices? We've got you covered. Check out the video cards for more related content. Don't forget to subscribe for weekly tips and explore the description for a curated list of resources to continue your e-learning journey.